Clearly, also this morning, Peter, we saw a massive jump in unemployment claims. Secretary Mnuchin said this morning in an interview on CNBC that he thought that would be temporary and that the stimulus bill would reverse it. Do you agree that that is the likely outcome?
I agree that the stimulus bill is going to help. This is a massive piece of legislation, but that's warranted. This is different than 2008 and 2009 because it is so sudden and it is so severe, and the unemployment insurance claims uptick, or more than uptick, that's an understatement, underscores that. But it's also a supply shock in addition to a demand shock, so it's much more complicated, and I'm very pleased to see that policymakers in Congress are acting so aggressively to try to blunt the potential damage here. Now it's really going to be up to implementation because there's a lot in this legislation, but how it's implemented is going to matter a lot.
Well, you were there, Peter. I mean, you were in the Obama administration, 2009, 2010, as we were getting out of the Great Recession there. What lessons do you think you can offer from TARP and the bailouts that were executed at that point and what we're dealing with right now?
Well, a few things. First, and let me again give kudos here because it took us 2 months basically to put together the stimulus legislation in early 2009. This was done basically in a week. And again, that's really commendable, especially given how polarized Washington is today. So Congress, in a sense, has done its part. Now, what the administration needs to do, I think, is a few things. First of all, you need to pay a lot of attention. There's going to be guidance coming out with regard to how to implement a lot of these new programs. For example, there's up to $454 billion in new funding for programs that the Fed and Treasury will administer, but not a lot of guidance in terms of exactly how it will work, the definitions that for companies that will qualify, and so on and so forth. So in the next week or so, we're going to get a lot more detail. But in terms of lessons to be learned, it takes a lot of effort to make sure that these things are administered well. There will be fraud, and that's part of the equation here when you're moving so much money, but trying to minimize that's really important. And especially given the potential long-term damage from not providing support now, the most important thing is for the administration to focus on getting this money out the door quickly to people and companies that need it.
Peter, how long can this stimulus package, and what we've seen from the Federal Reserve as well, how long can that keep the economy going for? If this prolongs, the health issues prolongs, and the lockdown prolongs past, say, 3 months, do we need another bill?
Well, a couple things on that. First, I think actually the biggest risk at this point, given that Congress has acted, the Fed is acting, is to undo the social distancing too soon and thereby prolong the health crisis and prolong the economic distress. And in fact, there's research out just today from economists at the Federal Reserve and at MIT studying what happened in the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, showing that it's the disease itself that causes the economic damage, and the cities in the United States that acted more aggressively to socially distance and take other steps to try to tamp down the pandemic did better from an economic perspective. So the biggest risk, and the thing that would prolong the difficulty here, is undoing the progress that we've made too soon, even though I know that seems very appealing. It seems very appealing to just say, oh, well, let's just go back to the way things were. But if you haven't actually solved the medical problem, that's a mirage. It's a false solution. So partly the answer to your question is going to depend what we do on the health side and whether we're patient enough to wait until there's an effective antiviral or treatment and antibody tests and other things that will allow us to go back to some degree of normality in business interactions, but not do so prematurely.
Peter, this idea that government can save the workers, I mean, to what extent is that true as you start to see the jobless claims weekly go up in the millions? How much can government really do here when it comes to unemployment insurance and preserving jobs when they're handing out assistance to these industries?
Well, here's the thing. This is a great example of where, frankly, only the government can do it. So I'm not sure that the government's going to provide a perfect solution here. And by the way, obviously, this is not just a problem in the United States. You see governments across continental Europe and elsewhere undertaking similar measures. But it's only forceful government action when hit with a shock of this size that lets us even have a shot or even have a chance of mitigating the damage to a significant degree. And again, I'm encouraged by how quickly and forcefully both the Fed and Congress are acting here. You could have imagined a much different scenario where we're in the midst of this health crisis and policymakers are kind of, dawdling or twiddling their thumbs. That has not happened, and now it's how it's implemented, as I said before. And then to Wilford's question, there may have to come additional stimulus. And by the way, that's one thing that is worth noting, which is last time we assumed there could be another round. This time, there may well have to be another round, and policymakers need to be more cooperative and expect that may happen, because the way that they wrote this legislation doesn't automatically extend, even if the economic difficulty extends. So a lot of the provisions are only in place for a certain period of time, and if the economic difficulty persists, we are going to need another round. And again, the best way of avoiding that situation is not to reverse ourselves on the social distancing prematurely.